In Tel Aviv, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Israel to enhance civilian protections and allow more aid into Gaza. At a handover ceremony today, Gabriel Attal took up the reins as France's youngest ever Prime Minister. In Tel Aviv, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Israel to enhance civilian protections and allow more aid into Gaza. Blinken told a press conference that Israel must be a partner with Palestinian leaders. Blinken also said he had promises from 4 Arab nations and Turkey to help rebuild Gaza after the war, but that aid was contingent on progress towards a Palestinian state. He reiterated the enormous cost the war was having on Palestinian lives.
We know that facing an enemy that embeds itself among civilians, who hides in and fires from schools, from hospitals, makes this incredibly challenging. But the daily toll on civilians in Gaza, particularly on children, is far too high.
Israeli forces have persisted with their offensive in Gaza, causing Palestinians to flee and impeding humanitarian aid efforts. The UN reported the bombing of a shelter housing UN staff in Khan Yunis and repeated targeting of the European hospital. Meanwhile, 57 bodies and 62 wounded in Israeli strikes arrived at Gaza's Al-Aqsa hospital following strikes in Deir el-Balah. The hospital is operating with only a fraction of its staff, and the area is now being evacuated. According to data from Gaza's health ministry, deemed reliable by the UN, the death toll in Gaza has risen to over 23,000 people, with more than 10,000 being children.
On Tuesday, Russian authorities announced that several people were wounded and 1 killed as a result of Ukrainian shelling in border regions. The Kremlin once again accused Ukraine of using cluster munitions. Russia's defense minister announced that Russia will step up the fight.
Будем наращивать поставки наиболее востребованных образцов, в частности, формировать серийную линейку беспилотных летательных аппаратов от сверхмалых до тяжелых ударных.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has convened a meeting dedicated to securing the contact line and strengthening air defense. Meanwhile, a UK defense intelligence review says that Russia's air defense is unable to keep important locations protected. Nonetheless, Russia's recent escalation of missile and drone attacks is stretching Ukraine's air defense resources. A Ukrainian Air Force official said on Tuesday, country vulnerable in the war unless it can secure further weapon supplies.
In a handover ceremony today, Gabriel Attal took up the reins as France's youngest ever Prime Minister. He takes over from outgoing Elisabeth Borne. President Emmanuel Macron is hoping to reinvigorate his struggling policy agenda with the change. At the ceremony, Attal promised to prioritise the nation's young people.
Cela a été dit ces dernières heures, j'ai pu le lire ou l'entendre. Le plus jeune président de la République de l'histoire nomme le plus jeune Premier ministre de l'histoire. Je ne veux y voir qu'un seul symbole, celui de l'audace et du mouvement. Le symbole aussi et peut-être surtout de la confiance, celle accordée à la jeunesse, cette génération qui mérite que l'on se batte pour elle sans relâche.
Attal's predecessor, Borne, resigned on Monday amid speculation Macron would cull her in his cabinet reshuffle. Many see the reshuffle as a way to align with France's far right, who are surging in the polls ahead of June's EU elections. Macron also hopes that his new youthful prime minister will help implement further political reforms during the remainder of his presidency. German politician Sarah Wagenknecht has formally launched a new party that could shake things up in the election year, the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, Reason and Justice. The party will offer a combination of left-wing economic policies with a restrictive approach to migration. Wagenknecht has previously questioned plans to combat climate change and opposes German arms supplies to Ukraine as well as sanctions on Russia. The party launches at a time where Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-party coalition is deeply unpopular.
The Italian opposition is demanding the government to explain how hundreds of people were able to give a fascist salute banned since the post-war without police intervention during a rally in Rome on Sunday evening. State television reported that Italian police were investigating, but the leader of the Democratic Party demanded an explanation for the inaction of the authorities.
Chi gestisce l'ordine pubblico deve avere il compito di fare in modo che quella manifestazione si conduca a termine con modalità tali che insomma prioritariamente non si registrino incidenti.
Far-right Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has not yet spoken out, but her coalition government has assured that it is not fascist and that all demonstrations in support of dictatorships must be condemned. The rally recalled the 1978 murder of 2 members of a neo-fascist group by far-left militants.
Spain's Ministry of Health will impose the mandatory use of masks in hospitals and health centers from Wednesday due to a flu wave. According to the latest report from the Carlos III Health Institute, the global incidence of respiratory virus infection is close to 1,000 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. Yet the hospitalization rate remains under 30 cases per 100,000 inhabitants. The rule is transitory in nature, while the epidemic peak of flu and coronavirus infections lasts.
A happy ending in Slovenia after divers rescued 5 people who'd been trapped underground for more than 2 days. They'd entered the Krishna Yarmad cave on Saturday, but got stuck after heavy rain caused the subterranean water to rise fast. The popular tourist destination features a string of emerald-coloured lakes and is only accessible by boat and raft. Rescue workers say the hours-long operation on Monday only became possible when the water levels dropped. Officials say all 5 are in good spirits and were not in need of medical help.
7.
It was the perfect liftoff for the first United States attempt at a moon landing in over 50 years. But less than 24 hours into the mission, the company that developed the lunar lander it was carrying said it was abandoning its attempt to put the Peregrine spacecraft on the moon. Astrobotic Technology said while it had resolved an orientation problem preventing the craft from charging its batteries, the thrusters stopping an uncontrollable tumble would likely only operate for another 40 hours at the most. It said it was aiming to get Peregrine as close to lunar distance as possible before losing power.
South Korea's parliament on Tuesday passed a landmark ban on production and sales of dog meat. The bill would make slaughtering, breeding, and sales of dog meat for human consumption illegal from 2027 and punishable by 2 to 3 years in prison. It doesn't provide any penalties for eating dog meat. Dog meat consumption is a centuries-old practice on the Korean peninsula. Recent surveys show that more than half of South Koreans want dog meat banned, and that a majority no longer eat it.
After 12 months which saw new daily and monthly record highs, 2023 has been confirmed as the hottest year to date. In its annual global report, Europe's Copernicus Space and Climate Data Agency says unprecedented temperatures from June onwards led 2023 to surpass 2016 as the warmest year so far. The data charts the rise of global surface temperatures relative to pre-industrial levels. It shows daily averages briefly topped them by more than 2 degrees Celsius at certain points in the year. Across the world, the extreme impact was evident in extensive wildfires and sustained heat waves, which may have been intensified by the El Niño weather phenomenon. Temperatures in Europe were above average for 11 months of the year, and 2023 saw the warmest September on record. The report also extrapolates that a 12-month period ending in January or February 2024 would exceed the 1.5 degrees Celsius global temperature rise level that the UN says would trigger irreversible climate change.
The average litre of bottled water has nearly 250,000 invisible pieces of ever so tiny nanoplastics, detected and categorized for the first time by a microscope using dual lasers. Researchers at Columbia and Rutgers University discovered about 10 to 100 times more nanoplastics than microplastics in bottled water.
I mean, whether we see it or not, it's out there. So it's better that we actually know
how much is out there and what they are. But I myself, as a scientist, I would want more data in terms of the toxicology study to actually know that how harmful it would be to my own body.
Nanoplastics are particles that are less than a micron in size. A human hair is about 83 microns wide. To answer the big question as to whether nanoplastic pieces are harmful to our health, experts agree that the new study opens doors to better understanding of the potential risks. Paris is immortalizing late British music icon David Bowie by naming a street after him on what would have been his 77th birthday. The inauguration on Monday of Rue David Bowie hints at how the singer felt about the city.
Il aimait beaucoup Paris, il aimait cette ville, il le disait, il y venait régulièrement, il s'y produisait aussi régulièrement. C'était la première ville, je crois, en dehors de l'espace britannique dans lequel il s'était produit. J'ai appris que nous étions les premiers au monde, j'en suis fort aise.
It's a wonderful occasion, and I think Paris meant a lot to David, and we had such incredible times here. So it makes it even more special.
You can never tell with David, you know, he's not, you can never predict what he was going to like or not like. And I think he would have liked this, yeah, why not? I think it's an honour, yeah.
Bowie died of cancer in 2016. There is no record of a street in his name anywhere else.